Great Falls is a city located in Montana known for its scenic beauty and vibrant community. The city is named after the series of waterfalls on the Missouri River, known as the Great Falls of the Missouri. The city offers a mix of natural beauty and urban amenities, with attractions like Giant Springs State Park and River's Edge Trail. And it is here that today's story takes place. But first, let's start from the very beginning. Dwayne Bogle was born on January 18, 1937 in Waco, Texas. His parents, James George Bogle Jr. and Albuquerque Walker, welcomed him with open arms. Dwayne was a high school graduate from Waco and was adored by his family for his charming personality and great sense of humor. As fate would have it, Dwayne's journey took him to the U.S. Air Force in 1955. Fresh-faced and full of ambition, was likely his first assignment after completing basic training and technical school. He was stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. For 8 months he served as an airman second class near the charming town of Great Falls. Little did he know that during his time there he would meet the love of his life. Patricia Kalitsky was born on August 20th, 1939 in the small town of Great Falls. She was a junior at Great Falls High School, and her classmates thought she was funny, caring, and full of energy. She always had a big smile on her face. Patricia seemed to be talented in everything she attempted, including ballet and tap dancing. In December 1955, 16-year-old Patricia crossed paths with 18-year-old Dwayne. They both shared a passion for dancing and singing, and as fate would have it, Dwayne fell head over heels for Patricia while stationed at Malmstrom. Their connection was instant, and despite knowing each other for only a few weeks, they couldn't bear to be apart and dreamt of a future together. Patricia's family welcomed Dwayne with open arms, and during Christmas of 1955, he even stayed at their home, becoming a part of their festivities. On that eventful day, January 2nd, 1956, Dwayne and Patricia embarked on a journey to Wadsworth Park full of joy and anticipation. They said goodbye to their families, burning with excitement for their very first trip together as a couple. Little did they know that this adventure would soon take an unforeseen turn, altering the course of their lives forever. They had planned to be back home by 9 p.m., but as the hours ticked away, Patricia's parents grew increasingly concerned. Patricia, known for her responsible and punctual nature, had failed to return by her usual 10 p.m. curfew. Frantic with worry, Patricia's parents reached out to her older sister, hoping for any clue of her whereabouts. But Patricia was nowhere to be found. They scoured the familiar places where Patricia liked to spend her time, yet she remained elusive. As their search grew more desperate, a troubling possibility crept into their minds. Could Patricia have followed in her sister's footsteps and eloped with Dwayne, having already experienced the pain of betrayal from their elder daughter? As years back she too eloped with her lover, they reluctantly believed the notion that history might be repeating itself. Fearing the worst but burdened by their past heartbreak, they hesitated to involve the police, unsure if Patricia had willingly vanished or if something more sinister had occurred. On a cold January 3rd, 1956, 3 adventurous boys went for a hike near Wadsworth Park in northwest Great Falls, Montana. As they walked along a dusty path, they came across a strange and unsettling sight. There was a car, parked between 2 trees, still running with the radio playing loudly. Its headlights were still on, and the emergency brake was on. It seemed like the driver had vanished just moments before. Fueled by curiosity, the boys cautiously approached the vehicle. To their shock, they discovered a lifeless man lying face down, partially trapped under the vehicle. They noticed that his hands had been tightly bound behind his back, using what looked like his own belt. The boys immediately alerted the authorities, who wasted no time in rushing to the scene to investigate. They carefully scoured the entire area, being careful not to disturb any potential evidence. During their examination of the body, they found a gunshot wound to the back of the man's head. Surprisingly, there were no other signs of injury on his body. This suggested that the killer's only motive was to end his life swiftly, without prolonging his suffering. As the police searched the car, they stumbled upon a crucial piece of identification, a driver's license belonging to an 8-year-old man named Dwayne Bogle, which provided a vital lead in the case. The police minds raced with theories, one of which was robbery. The car's engine was still running, indicating a swift getaway by the killer after snatching valuables. But then they had a terrifying suspicion. They believed that something more sinister than just robbery had occurred. At that time, kidnappings were occurring frequently, which raised concerns that Dwayne might have been deliberately chosen as a target. It appeared that the perpetrator's original plan had gone terribly wrong, resulting in the tragic decision to end Dwayne's life. The police were determined to find any clue, so they carefully searched every corner of the area. However, the predator had managed to cover his tracks completely, leaving no evidence behind. The police then contacted Dwayne's family and shared the devastating news of his murder. When Dwayne's parents received the shocking information, they were overwhelmed with disbelief and sorrow. They couldn't comprehend how someone could harm their beloved son, who was always full of joy and loved by everyone. It was an incredibly heart-wrenching moment for them. Upon hearing the news, Patricia's worried parents stepped forward and shared crucial information with the police. They revealed that Patricia was also with Dwayne and hadn't returned home either. Concerned for her safety, they expressed their fear that if Dwayne had been killed, then where was Patricia? The police were puzzled because during their initial investigation at the crime scene, there were no signs of Patricia nearby. Determined to find her, they returned to the scene and intensified their search. It was on the following day, January 4th, 1956, that Patricia's lifeless body was discovered by a road worker along Vineyard Road, 5 miles outside of Great Falls. The grim location was nearly 8 miles away from where Dwayne's body had been found. It was evident that Patricia had likely been kidnapped. Tragically, a trail of blood leading down the rocky ravine indicated that her body had rolled to the spot from the gravel road above. Like Dwayne, she had also suffered a gunshot wound to the back of her head. Little did the authorities know, this was just the beginning of a twisted and chilling mystery. The police decided to investigate the sequence of events and gather information about Patricia and Dwayne's last known movements. They discovered that the couple had been seen together at Pete's Drive-In restaurant, enjoying a drink on the evening of January 2nd, 1956. According to the restaurant staff, they arrived at 8:30 p.m. and left shortly after 9:00. They were alone in the car during their visit. The location where Dwayne and his car were found was known as a popular spot for couples, leading the police to believe that Patricia and Dwayne had driven there willingly. It seemed that their killer had come across them at that spot and forced them out of the vehicle. Authorities firmly believed that Dwayne and Patricia had fallen victim to the same perpetrator, given the striking similarities in their deaths. The unsettling circumstances pointed to a chilling execution-style killing where both victims were forced to kneel before being fatally shot in the back of the head. As the investigation progressed, a chilling detail emerged. Patricia's body, discovered at the bottom of a rocky ravine, was fully clothed except for a single missing shoe that was never found, which had slipped off as she rolled down the embankment. The initial examination of her body also provided no conclusive evidence of assault. However, as the investigation deepened, a surprising twist emerged. The results of further testing and examination painted a completely different picture. The revelation came when injuries consistent with assault were discovered on Patricia's body, contradicting the initial assessment. They were also able to take a swab from her that they hoped would help identify the killer. Unfortunately, the technological limitations of the time prevented any conclusive findings. However, all the testing reports and evidence were carefully preserved for future breakthroughs that could unravel the mystery. The coroner's assessment added another layer of intrigue. It was believed that Dwayne had actually clung to life for several hours after being shot. The shooting itself was estimated to have taken place sometime between 10 p.m. and midnight, and Dwayne's tragic demise occurred between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Authorities were dedicated to identifying the killer, and they launched a massive investigation. Sheriff DJ Leeper from the Great Falls Sheriff's Office went the extra mile by using his own money to buy a polygraph machine that could potentially unlock vital clues. They called in an expert from Seattle to ensure its proper use. A team of 10 officers devoted themselves to the case, working day and night. The search began for anyone with the potential motive to harm either Dwayne or Patricia as the net of suspicion widened. Patricia's mother, Catherine, shared a concerning conversation she had with Dwayne the day before his lifeless body was found on January 2nd, 1956. Dwayne seemed troubled, and Catherine, being a caring mother, asked him what was bothering him. Dwayne revealed he had been upset about a recent argument he had with a friend from Texas. This piece of information piqued the authorities' interest, as they wondered if this friend could be connected to Patricia and Dwayne's murder. Somehow they tracked down the friend and questioned him for 4 hours. Eventually the police had to release him when they couldn't find any evidence linking him to the murders. Moreover, he was proven to be in his Texas home at the time of the murder. Frustratingly, the police couldn't find a clear personal motive behind the murders of Dwayne and Patricia. This roadblock narrowed their investigation options, so they shifted their focus to the people who had been out drinking on the night of the murders and also tried to identify the individuals who kept guns with them. Just when things seemed bleak, 2 witnesses emerged with a surprising piece of information. On January 10, 1956, they informed the police about a man not only possessed a gun, but was also seen returning to his house around midnight clutching the weapon in his hand. This information sparked a glimmer of hope that they might have finally caught a break in the case. But their hope quickly faded. When they confronted the person and spoke with him, he vehemently denied leaving his house that night and claimed to not even own a gun. The police's suspicions were nearly enough to arrest him based on the testimony of the two men. However, in a shocking turn of events, the witnesses eventually confessed after hours of intense questioning. It turned out that they had been lying all along. Driven by their deep hatred for the man, they saw this ongoing investigation as an opportunity to fulfill their desire for revenge. This revelation left the police stunned and frustrated, realizing that they were back to square one in their search for the true culprit. After 2 months in March 1956, Sheriff Leeper had to end the full-time inquiry into the case without identifying the killer. The lack of progress was disheartening for the sheriff, who expressed his frustration and regret for not catching the person responsible for the deaths of Patricia and Dwayne. The investigation continued, but after a year, on the one-year anniversary of the murders in January 1957, the sheriff spoke to the Great Falls Tribune. He shared his determination to keep going, saying, "I guess it's just one of those things, but we're not giving up. Maybe this year we'll catch them. He must have made a mistake. They all do. Someday we'll find out what it was, and then we'll have them." The deaths of Dwayne and Patricia had a deep impact on their families and the communities they belonged to. Patricia's father, Henry, became emotionally numb and found it incredibly difficult to acknowledge Patricia's death. Patricia's sister, Darlene, shared in an interview with the television show Hard Copy that their father, Henry, couldn't bring himself to talk about Patricia or cope with the loss. In order to find solace, Darlene chose to cherish the happy memories she had with her sister. Despite the pain, both families knew that nothing could bring Patricia and Dwayne back. The loss was so difficult to comprehend, and finding closure seemed like a distant possibility. Patricia's mother, Catherine, shared that she and Dwayne's mother exchanged letters for years after the murder. Their correspondence served as a way for the two families to connect, united by the tragedy and grief they experienced. All the while, the case had been cold. In 2001, Detective Phil Madison joined the investigation into Dwayne and Patricia's murder with a fresh approach. He discovered a swab taken from Patricia's autopsy that had been stored as evidence for over 45 years. With advancements in DNA technology, the swab was sent to the Montana State Police Crime Lab for analysis. Shockingly, the lab found a cell in the swab that did not belong to Dwayne, confirming that Patricia had been assaulted. Authorities spent the next few years comparing the DNA from the cell to more than 35 suspects previously identified. However, none of the suspects' DNA matched the one found on the swab. The investigators also checked the DNA found on the swab against national criminal databases, but no match was found. They looked into suspects such as James Whitey Bulger, a notorious mobster from Boston, who had lived in the Great Falls area during the time of the murders. Bulger had a previous arrest for assaulting a 15-year-old girl in 1951. Another potential suspect was Edward Wayne, a convicted serial killer who had murdered two couples years after Dwayne and Patricia's death. The police thought he might have been in the Great Falls area during that time, but he denied any involvement. Both Bulger and Wayne were ruled out as suspects when their DNA did not match the DNA found on the swab. The investigation went on for another 18 years until a breakthrough emerged. Inspired by the technique used in solving the Golden State Killer case in 2018, Detective Sergeant John Cadnaran, who was assigned to the case of Patricia and Dwayne's murder, had a strong determination to take the investigation forward. He teamed up with forensic scientists to gather more DNA evidence from the swab taken during Patricia's autopsy. In 2019, they adopted a cutting-edge method called genetic genealogy. Using biotechnology, this innovative technique allowed forensic genealogists to compare the DNA profile found at the crime scene with profiles in public genealogical databases. By analyzing the shared DNA, they were able to uncover distant relatives and construct a family tree. It was like solving a puzzle, connecting the dots between different individuals and their genetic ties. With the meticulous construction of the family tree, the investigators were on the verge of unmasking the suspect. However, there was a chilling twist in the story. The prime suspect had already passed away and his remains had been cremated, making it impossible to obtain a direct DNA sample from him. Undeterred, they turned their attention to the suspect's children, who resided near Great Falls, and requested their DNA for comparison. To their surprise, the DNA from the children confirmed that their father was the source of the cell found during Patricia's autopsy. It was a devastating realization for the children to discover that their beloved father was responsible for the death of two people. On June 8, 2021, the Cascade County Sheriff's Office officially announced the identity of the perpetrator in Patricia and Dwayne's murder as Kenneth Gould, who also lived in Great Falls. After thorough investigation and confirmation through DNA analysis, the authorities strongly believed that Kenneth Gould was the one responsible for the murders of Patricia and Dwayne. However, since Gould had already passed away, he could not face a trial or be officially named as the killer. Instead, they could only label him as the most likely suspect in the case. This groundbreaking announcement came more than 65 years after Patricia and Dwayne's tragic deaths, marking it as the oldest case in the world ever solved using the innovative technique of genetic genealogy. Kenneth Gould, a local horse trainer, had spent his early years in Great Falls, Montana. He got married in 1952 when he was 24 years old to 16-year-old Lulabelle Brown and started a family raising 5 children. Surprisingly, he lived just a short distance from Patricia's house and was frequently seen riding horses in the area at the time of the murder. Despite his proximity to the crime scene, Huld's name never appeared in the police files and there was no apparent connection between him and Dwayne or Patricia. Curiously, a month after the murders in February 1956, Huld sold his family property and embarked on a series of moves across Montana, eventually settling in Missouri in 1967. From that point on, he never returned to Montana. Gould's journey came to an end in 2001 when he passed away in Oregon County, Missouri at the age of 79. His life remained intertwined with the mystery of Patricia and Dwayne's murders, leaving unanswered questions about his possible involvement and the reason behind the murders. Speaking about the case, Detective Sergeant John Cadner from the Cascade County Sheriff's Office mentioned that people can have secrets they never tell anyone. Because a lot of time had passed between the murders and Gould being identified, many of Patricia and Dwayne's loved ones had already passed away and couldn't hear the news. Patricia's only surviving sister Darlene had advanced dementia when Gould was finally identified. The resolution of the case evoked various emotions within Dwayne and Patricia's family. Although they were relieved to finally have answers, Gould's identification brought back memories and reopened old emotional wounds among the relatives. Dwayne's niece, Karen Bogle McCarthy, expressed her thoughts to the New York Times, saying that the use of modern technology in solving the case was beneficial for her generation. Karen was the daughter of Dwayne's younger brother, James Jim Bogle, who had always looked up to Dwayne while growing up. Unfortunately, Jim didn't live long enough to witness the identification of his beloved brother's killer, as he passed away in November 2013 due to a neurodegenerative disease. Patricia and Dwayne's surviving family felt a great sense of relief, as they no longer had to deal with the wild speculations and strange theories surrounding the case. One theory that deeply upset Dwayne's family was the belief that he had become involved with the mob in Great Falls, leading to their tragic deaths. There are also rumors suggesting Dwayne's involvement with drug dealers in Texas. However, Gould's identification not only revealed the truth about who took Dwayne away from his family, but it also put an end to decades of speculation and rumors. While closure has been found, the emotional wounds remain for the families affected by this tragedy. "22-year-old Christopher Hervey lived in Santa Ana, California in 1996. His girlfriend, Jade Benning, lived with him and she was also 22 years old. At 3 a.m. on January 4, 1996, Jade called 911. She said that a man broke into their apartment and fatally stabbed Christopher. According to her, she suffered a minor cut to her right hand when she struggled with the intruder. A witness also told police they saw a man running from the apartment building. Investigators discovered Christopher's body with multiple wounds to his chest. They couldn't find the weapon anywhere. Neighbors told police how they heard a loud argument taking place shortly before Christopher was stabbed, lasting for around 15 minutes. Investigators continued to work the case, but their leads went cold until an anonymous letter arrived in January 2020 that implicated Benning in the case. A cold case detective believed there to be enough after following up on the case, and obtained a criminal complaint from the Orange County District Attorney's Office together with a warrant for Benning's arrest. 48-year-old Jade Manda Benning, who now lives in Austin, Texas, was arrested on May 3, 2022, near her home after an investigation that involved forensics. Agents from the U.S. Marshals Lone Star Fugitive Task Force arrested her. Detectives from the Santa Ana Police Department were also present to witness Benning being apprehended. She had been extradited to California to face the charges, and she is being held on a $1 million bail. We don't know exactly what led to the arrest, but we do know that evidence against her includes something police found when they executed search warrants in Austin, Texas in June 2020. Bennying is currently in Orange County Jail. Her arraignment is scheduled for June 8, 2022. 35-year-old Joy Hibbs lived in Croydon, Pennsylvania in 1991. She was married to Charlie Hibbs. They had 2 children, Angie and David. On April 19, 1991, when 12-year-old David came home from school, he found the house ablaze. He ran for help, knowing that his mother was most likely inside. Firefighters found Joy's body in David's room. Initially, police believed she passed away in an accidental house fire. They found 4 gas burners on the kitchen stove that were turned on and ignited. When the autopsy was done, investigators determined that she was deceased before the fire was set. Police discovered what was later found to be a computer cord wrapped around Joy's upper torso. The autopsy determined she had been stabbed 5 times, strangled and badly beaten. The autopsy also showed what would turn out to be an important detail. Joy Hibbs had smoked marijuana the morning of the fire. It'll make sense later on why this detail is important. Investigators quickly concluded the fire was set to destroy evidence of the crime, and authorities said it was largely successful, as much of the forensic evidence police would hope to find was destroyed. The fire marshal found 4 areas where the fire started, and in at least one spot accelerant was likely used. Without the forensic evidence, Bristol Township Police dug into Joy's life, creating a working timeline for when her life was taken and the arson. She left a paper trail showing her moves on the morning of the fire. She cashed her paycheck at a bank and went grocery shopping, which was her normal Friday routine. She then came home around 11 a.m. and a neighbor reported seeing her walking the family's new puppy named Major. 2 people from the Ben Salem Baptist Church, where Joy attended Easter services, dropped by to talk about joining the congregation sometime after 11 a.m. They left before noon. It was shortly after 1 p.m. when David returned home from school to find the house on fire. Joy's wallet was later found in the cushions of the living room couch, but it was empty, though she had cast her check hours earlier. Her purse was found on the kitchen floor, with its contents dumped out. This implied that robbery could be the motive, but it didn't quite make sense to investigators. Taking someone's life in such a vicious way and then set the house on fire for just a few $100s. Police interviewed her employer, friends, neighbors, and family, but found that everyone who knew her seemed to love the mom that grew up the youngest of 9 children in Central Florida. She camped, hiked, fished, grew vegetables, and loved making fried okra. Since many crimes of this nature are usually committed by the spouse, Charlie Hibbs was of course looked into. There was no sign of trouble in their marriage. Joy and Charlie were high school sweethearts. They celebrated their 18th wedding anniversary less than a week before her life was ended. Charlie also had a solid alibi. He was on a job site in Philadelphia, something co-workers confirmed. The only thing out of the ordinary that day was a dark-colored Monte Carlo parked 3 feet from the curb near the Hibbs. A neighbor who noticed the vehicle later reported it to police, telling them it was unusual for a car to be parked directly in front of the Hibbs home, which was at a T intersection. Robert Adkins soon became a suspect in the case. He sold marijuana occasionally to Joy. He owned a Chevy Monte Carlo. As you'll remember, Joy smoked marijuana on the morning of the fire. With a car similar to his seen in front of her house, this likely meant Adkins was at the scene around the time of the crime. Investigators learned that Joy and Adkins had argued over the quality of the drug he sold her, and Adkins refused to refund the money. While investigators believed it was possible that Adkins was involved, they couldn't prove it. The case made the rounds around Bristol Township police detectives over the years, until it was assigned to Bristol Township Detective Michael Slaughter in 2014. He dug into the reports and re-interviewed investigating officers and witnesses from 1991. Slaughter also determined that Robert Adkins and his then-wife April were persons of interest. When Slaughter had shown up for a surprise interview with April Adkins in 2014, she told him that Bristol Township Police had never interviewed her about her ex-husband, despite his alibi that placed the couple together in the Poconos with their children the weekend of Joy's demise. April Adkins told Slaughter that she and her husband and children were in the Poconos that weekend, and when they returned they heard about what happened to Joy. The Bristol Township detective interviewed Robert Adkins 2 days after he spoke with his ex-wife in 2014. During that interview, Robert Adkins admitted to being a confidential informant for Bristol Township Police Department at the time of the crime, and that he had been a methamphetamine user and got the drug for other people, though he didn't consider himself a dealer. He also admitted to the dispute over poor-quality marijuana with Joy, but denied threatening her or her family. He just simply couldn't give Joy a refund, he told the detective. Atkins claimed he had left Bristol Township around noon the day of the fire for a weekend trip to the Poconos with his wife and children. He said he could provide an alibi too, telling Slaughter a lady, later described as a co-worker of his wife, could confirm his whereabouts in 1991. Atkins also said that Bristol Township police checked the hotel where he stayed at in the Poconos, and that cleared him further. More than a year later, in a December 2015 interview with Slaughter, former Chief Tom Mills confirmed that in 1991, Atkins was a confidential informant for the police purchasing methamphetamine and marijuana. Mills told Slaughter that he interviewed Atkins for the first time 2 days after the crime in 1991, when he was asked by a lieutenant to deliver a message to Atkins to contact police before his name came up in the investigation. Mills and Detective Al Lilac, who was Atkinson's handler, went to Atkinson's apartment, but he wouldn't let them inside. Mills said he noticed a dark-colored 70s vintage Monte Carlo in the apartment complex parking lot. In 2016, April Atkins showed up at the Bristol Township Police Station on a Sunday. She wanted to tell Slaughter, whose business card she saved, what really happened the day Joy Hibbs lost her life. She said that day, her ex-husband showed up at the home covered in blood. He confessed he had stabbed someone and set the house on fire. He ordered her to call out of work and pack up their kids. The family fled to the Poconos for 2 days. April Atkins, who at the time shared a young child and baby with her husband, learned about Joy Hibbs only after the family returned, she told police. April Atkins said she didn't tell police what she knew when Slaughter first interviewed her in 2014, because she feared for her third and youngest child's safety because he lived with Robert Atkins at the time. Another 5 years would pass before Bucks County detectives would speak with Robert Atkinson's alleged alibi. A former co-worker of April Atkins, who provided Robert Atkins with what authorities now say is a fake alibi. The woman told investigators in 2021 that police interviewed her in June of 1991, 3 days after Robert Atkins shared her contact information with them. The woman told police she called the Atkinsons' home between 1 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. on April 19, 1991, and Robert Atkins answered the phone. In May of 2022, 56-year-old Robert Atkins was charged in connection to the case. He was arraigned by Judge Frank Parantu, Sr. in Bristol, and ordered to Bucks County Correctional Center without bail. The Bucks County District Attorney's Office held a news conference with DA Matt Weintraub, saying it was a gratifying day when he could bring closure to the Hibbs family with an arrest. In a statement read on behalf of the family by Weintraub, Joy Hibbs was described as a sweet, charming Southern girl, and a loving and devoted wife and mother. For 31 years our family has been haunted by this tragic, lost, knowing, without a doubt, that Robert Atkins was the perpetrator, the statement read. Our family has waited 31 years for justice to prevail. Authorities continue to investigate, and anyone with information should contact either Detective Hanks at 215-348-6056 or Sergeant Slaughter at 215-785-4040. The case of Jennifer Wilbanks. Jennifer Wilbanks was born on February 28, 1973, in Georgia, where she spent her entire life surrounded by family, friends, and work. It was in Duluth that she met her fiancé, John Mason, who was also 32 years old. John came from a wealthy family that owned a private medical clinic in Duluth. His friends described him as a kind and caring person who was always willing to help those in need. Jennifer and John had been dating for about a year and seemed like the perfect couple. Everyone who knew them was excited when they announced their engagement. The wedding preparations were underway and a lavish ceremony was planned for April 30, 2005, with several hundred guests invited. However, just 4 days before the wedding, on April 26, 2005, John reported Jennifer's disappearance to the police. He claimed she had gone for an evening run and never returned. John initially tried to find Jennifer on his own, but eventually sought help from law enforcement. The next day, April 27th, a massive search operation was launched involving over 300 police officers and volunteers. They combed through the wooded areas and water bodies along the route Jennifer was supposed to run. Given the urgency of the situation, even off-duty police officers were called in to assist. One of the search teams found potential clues, including clothing, sneakers, and a strand of long, dark hair. All of these findings were sent to the lab for examination. Jennifer's family distributed flyers with her picture and posted them around the city, hoping someone might have information about her disappearance. The media picked up the story, and billboards with her image appeared around town. The police searched the home she shared with her fiancé, John, but found nothing suspicious. As the investigation continued, Major Donald Woodruff of the Duluth Police Department announced that Jennifer's disappearance was being treated as a criminal case, with the FBI and Georgia Bureau of Investigation involved. Despite a second day of searching, no signs of Jennifer were found. Her family was shocked and distraught, and they reached out to radio and TV stations to publicize her disappearance, suggesting that she might have been kidnapped and taken out of state. Jennifer's family begged her possible kidnapper to release her. The cable news channels extensively covered the story, raising questions about her disappearance. Jennifer was just 4 days away from her wedding. Her relatives, visibly distraught, made emotional appeals during press conferences and interviews. In this photo, a visibly distressed John Mason is shown comforting his mother-in-law. If you're familiar with true crime stories, you may have already pieced together the events surrounding Jennifer's disappearance. As the last person to see Jennifer alive, John became the subject of suspicion when searches yielded no results. Investigators sought to uncover the truth behind John's wholesome image. To those who knew him, he appeared to be a law-abiding citizen who attended church every Sunday and couldn't harm a fly. He was asked to take a lie detector test, but he declined. Instead, he took a private polygraph test with his lawyer present and gave the results to the police. However, this unusual action only heightened the detective's suspicions about John Mason. The test results did not conclusively determine whether John was involved in his fiancée's disappearance. To investigate potential motives, detectives conducted a thorough search of their home and seized 3 computers. Notably, no signs of a struggle or evidence of a crime were found in the house. On the day before the wedding, Jennifer's family offered a $100,000 reward for information that could help find her, either dead or alive. The police held a press conference to announce that they were ending the active search. According to the police chief, they had exhausted all possible leads in the area and found no clues, leading them to call off the search. John Mason attended the press conference but did not speak to reporters. Jennifer's uncle speculated that John was simply unsure of what to say, which only fueled speculation about his involvement in her disappearance. Initially, the police found some items, including clothes, shoes, and a lock of hair that they thought might be connected to Jennifer's disappearance. However, further investigation revealed that these items had no link to her case. The only suspect with a potential motive was John, and journalists were closely following him, making it seem likely that he was involved in her disappearance. However, no concrete evidence had been found. The next day, which was supposed to be Jennifer's wedding day, people gathered to pray for her safe return. On the evening of April 29th, John received a mysterious phone call from an unknown number. When he answered, he was shocked to hear Jennifer's voice on the other end. She told him that she had been kidnapped, taken to an unknown location, and forced into a physically intimate situation. She was crying and said that after everything was over, she was released, but now she was lost and didn't know where she was. John was overcome with emotions as he spoke to Jennifer, trying to remain calm to keep her calm as well. He was relieved to know she was alive, but soon a new end development would arise. After talking to John, Jennifer called 911 and reported her alleged kidnapping and release, stating that she was unsure of her location. The police investigation into Jennifer's disappearance led them to a payphone in Albuquerque, New Mexico, over 1,400 miles from her hometown of Duluth, Georgia. When officers arrived at the scene, they found Jennifer, who was reunited with her relieved family. The family praised the efforts of the community and the media, believing their attention had persuaded the supposed kidnapper to release Jennifer. However, during her interview at the police station, authorities noticed discrepancies between Jennifer's account of her ordeal and her actual appearance. She claimed to have been held captive by a man and a woman in their 40s, tied up in a blue van. But when FBI agents questioned her, they found numerous inconsistencies in her story. Confronted with these discrepancies, Jennifer confessed that she had fabricated the entire kidnapping. Jennifer had actually left her fiancé, John, by telling him she was going for a run and instead boarded a bus to New Mexico. She explained that she had been overwhelmed by the pressure of her upcoming wedding and couldn't cope. Further investigation revealed that Jennifer had a history of problematic behavior with 3 prior charges of shoplifting. Jennifer was involved in several incidents of theft before her infamous kidnapping case. In 1996, she stole $37 worth of goods from Walmart. The following year, at the age of 24, she was accused of stealing $1,740 worth of merchandise from a supermarket. She paid for the damages and completed community service, which led to the theft charges being dropped. However, in 1998, she was caught stealing again with damages amounting to $98. There were also allegations of theft from families who had hired her as a nanny. These thefts were considered minor, and she managed to avoid imprisonment. After her disappearance and subsequent return, the attention shifted from the thefts to the large-scale search operation conducted by the state of Georgia, which cost nearly $60,000. Jennifer attributed her disappearance to the overwhelming pressure of her impending wedding. With numerous tasks to complete and limited time, she felt stressed and pressured. Authorities later stated that the wedding had become too much for her to handle. Duluth Police Chief Randy Belcher clarified that Jennifer's fiancé was innocent of any involvement in her disappearance, despite initial suspicions. Jennifer Wilbanks, dubbed the runaway bride, apologized publicly to her family, friends, and community for her disappearance. When she returned, her fiancé, John Mason, immediately gave her back the engagement ring she had left behind, signifying his ongoing commitment to their relationship. According to Mason, his commitment to Wilbanks was solidified when he proposed and gave her the ring, regardless of their unfinished wedding plans. Following her return, Wilbanks sought medical treatment to address underlying issues that contributed to her escape. However, her troubles persisted, and she was charged with making false statements related to her disappearance. This led to a guilty plea for perjury, resulting in 2 years of probation, 120 hours of community service, and a restitution payment of over $15,000 to the city. The situation took another turn when Wilbanks sued her now ex-fiancé, John Mason, in 2006. They had ended their engagement, and Wilbanks claimed that Mason had exploited her trust during her treatment by selling the rights to their story for $500,000 without her knowledge. He allegedly used the funds to purchase a house, registered solely in his name, and then kicked her out after their breakup. Wilbanks sought $250,000 as compensation for her share of the house and an additional $250,000 in damages. After the failed wedding, John Mason filed a countersuit against Jennifer Wilbanks, claiming he suffered emotional distress from being left at the wedding, suggesting she might have been involved in her own disappearance. In December 2006, both parties dropped their lawsuits, reportedly as part of a settlement. Meanwhile, Jennifer's notoriety caught the attention of global media, making her a temporary celebrity. In the aftermath, several products emerged, such as a runaway bride action figure in a hot sauce called Jennifer's Hightail in Hot Sauce. A musical play based on her story opened in Duluth, Georgia in March 2008. Even a photo of her fiancé, John Mason, appeared in the house for the 2008 movie, The Grand. Eventually, John Mason married another woman in 2008 in a small ceremony at his parents' home. Jennifer also got married in 2010, but her marriage ended after 11 years, and she still resides in Georgia. The case of Cody Johnson. At the age of 23, Cody was looking for a long-term partner. He confided in his friends about his desire to marry a woman who shared his values, specifically someone from a religious background. On Halloween 2011, he met Jordan, who would eventually become a pivotal figure in his life. Born in August 1991, Jordan grew up in Kalispell, in a deeply religious family. She attended the Faith Baptist Church, where she worked with children and families, and her ultimate goal was to become a stay-at-home mother. When Cody and Jordan first met on Halloween, they quickly formed a connection. Although initially shy, Jordan opened up to Cody about her dreams of starting a family and her love for nature. Cody was smitten, but Jordan, who was only 20 at the time, was not ready for a serious relationship. They went on a few casual dates but maintained a platonic relationship. However, Cody's feelings for Jordan only intensified, and he made a concerted effort to win her over. He joined her church, First Baptist, and began to socialize with her friends and community. Before long, their friendship blossomed into something more. Cody and Jordan officially started dating in November 2011, and Cody became completely enamored with her, wanting to spend all his time with her. Cody was convinced he wanted to marry Jordan just weeks into their relationship, despite her desire to remain chaste until marriage. Those close to them noticed Jordan didn't seem as invested in Cody as he was in her. While some attributed this to her shy nature, others were concerned about the imbalance in their relationship. They rarely showed affection in public, didn't hold hands, and didn't flirt. So, when Cody proposed in December 2012, many of Jordan's friends were surprised she accepted. They thought she wasn't ready for marriage after just a year of dating, but they were happy for her. Jordan eagerly shared her engagement ring on Instagram, captioning the post, "Best early Christmas present ever." The wedding was set for June 29, 2013, and planning began immediately. Cody was heavily involved, along with Jordan's best friend and matron of honor, Kimberly Martinez. However, it was Jordan who seemed most enthusiastic about the wedding planning, even going so far as to perform a song with custom-written lyrics by Elizabeth Shee, which would later seem eerily prophetic. When someone, including Kimberly, brought up the idea of actually being married to Cody, Jordan's mood would quickly deteriorate. She repeatedly questioned Kimberly, her matron of honor, about whether she was making the right decision. On her wedding day, Jordan's true feelings about the marriage were evident. She was anxious and avoided eye contact with Cody, frequently looking down. Despite regaining her composure for the wedding photos and first dance, Jordan's unease persisted. The morning after the wedding, Jordan confided in a friend via text from their honeymoon hotel room. She revealed that she had not consummated the marriage and had rejected Cody's advances, not only on their wedding night, but for the next 6 nights as well. Jordan was anxious about Cody's expectations and didn't want to be intimate. She planned to use the excuse that her period had started, hoping it would work, as she feared being forced into something would cause her to panic. Jordan had an intense fear of sex due to her faith and reservations about Cody, causing her to feel anxious about intimacy with him. This anxiety reached a boiling point on July 7th, 8 days after their wedding, when Cody canceled his golfing trip with friends at the last minute, because Jordan had planned a surprise for him. After attending church and spending some time alone on the lake, they had dinner with friends at Dairy Queen. Cody then went home with Jordan, and this was the last time anyone saw him. When Cody failed to show up for work, his coworker Cameron Fredrickson became concerned. As a reliable and punctual employee, Cody's absence was unusual. Cameron decided to visit Cody's new house, which he had purchased with Jordan before their wedding. After knocking with no response, Cameron let himself in and searched the house for any clues about their disappearance. However, he found nothing. Cameron's concern turned to fear when he discovered Cody's phone in the garage. It was unusual for Cody to be without his phone, and this sparked grave concerns. After making several calls, Cameron learned that no one had seen Cody since dinner at Dairy Queen at 8:30. He immediately went to the police station to file a missing persons report, and the authorities took the case seriously from the start. Officer Chaz Zimmerman, one of the first to question Cameron, was struck by his distress. Zimmerman found it odd that Cameron's boss, not his wife Kimberly, reported him missing. Later that day, Kimberly finally reached Jordan, who claimed that Cameron had left with friends in a black car with Washington plates. According to Jordan, Cameron had received a disturbing phone call at the restaurant, so she gave him space. However, that night, Kimberly retrieved her phone charger from their car and discovered a text from Cody. The message stated that Cameron had planned to go for a ride with out-of-town friends who were visiting. Cody was unclear about the friends' identities, but Cameron always took his visiting friends to Glacier Park. Jordan told the police that she didn't recognize the men who were involved in Cody's disappearance, and that they hadn't fought that night. She suggested that Cody might have gone joyriding with his friends from out of town as a possible reason for his disappearance. When questioned about why she didn't report Cody missing, Jordan explained that she didn't want to upset him by filing a report if he was planning to return within a few hours. However, as the hours turned into days, Cody's friends and family gathered at the family home, expressing confusion over his sudden disappearance. It didn't seem like something Cody would do, leaving his wife without a word. Jordan maintained her story until Kimberly confronted her about it. As the conversation continued, Jordan became increasingly uncomfortable. Eventually, she became so agitated that she threw her wedding ring across the room. While some thought this was just her unusual way of coping with the situation, Kimberly was convinced that Jordan was hiding something. The next day, she returned home and called her friend. Meanwhile, Jordan was summoned to the police station, where she was confronted by officers about the inconsistencies in her story. One of the officers said, "Jordan, I've gathered information that contradicts what you're telling me. I've spoken to several people, and it's crucial that I know you're being honest." Jordan responded, "I understand, and I think there's more to the story." Around the same time, Sheriff Johnson met with the police, armed with Cody's phone records from the day he vanished. She was worried about her son, and hoped that the mysterious man Cody had called could provide some clues about his disappearance. However, it turned out that the mysterious caller was simply a friend returning a tool to Cody. The police quickly ruled him out as a suspect because he had a solid alibi. His wife was in labor at the time of Cody's disappearance. With all other leads exhausted, the police refocused their attention on Jordan. It was clear that she was hiding something, but her story didn't quite add up. On July 10th, a crucial breakthrough emerged in the case. An unexpected email arrived from Carmen Tony 607, claiming that Cody was dead and there was no need to continue searching. The message read, Jordan showed the email to Hannah, remaining expressionless as he relayed the news. According to the email, Cody had supposedly died after falling off a cliff in Glacier National Park while with unknown companions. Hannah was devastated upon reading the message and urged Jordan to report it to the police immediately. Hannah recalled her reaction. Jordan didn't show any emotion, didn't even cry. She just handed me the email and I started shaking. I told her to go to the police, and she did, but I was rushing her, saying, "Go, move, what are you doing?" Detective Corey Clark was frustrated that the investigation was ongoing, and an anonymous email hadn't provided the closure they needed. In fact, the email seemed suspiciously convenient at providing the exact information they'd been searching for and advising them to call off the search. What bothered Clark more than the email's content was Jordan's reaction, or lack thereof. She seemed completely unfazed by the news, which implied her husband's death. Jordan's behavior became even more peculiar when she organized a trip to Glacier National Park with her friends and family to search for Cody. According to Hannah, Jordan was despite finding nothing on the first day. They resumed their search on the second day, and it was then that Jordan suddenly claimed to have found Cody's body. Her announcement was met with skepticism. It's baffling that someone would do such a thing. This wall serves a purpose, after all. The autopsy revealed that the victim's head and arms suffered the most damage from the fall. Cody's loved ones were heartbroken over his death, but Jordan felt a sense of relief, according to Hannah. Now that a body had been found, the authorities would finally close the case. However, there was still a major issue. The police had no idea who man Tony 607 was. When Jordan was first questioned about the mysterious message, she directed the police to Tony Stalkup, a fellow car enthusiast and acquaintance of Cody's. Although Tony hadn't seen Cody in several months, he was so worried about him that he gave the police full access to his accounts. The police were unable to find the email address they were looking for, and Jordan and Cody's phone records did not provide much information. As a result, they had to contact Google to obtain the IP address associated with Carmen Tony 607. While waiting for this information, the police re-interviewed Cody's family and friends. During these interviews, Kimberly finally shared with the police Jordan's fragile mental state leading up to her marriage to Cody. She had expressed doubts and fears about marrying him, asking Kimberly multiple times if she should go through with the wedding. Jordan confided in Kimberly about her horror and fear of having sex with Cody, even regretting that Ed had married him and wishing she could undo everything. When Kimberly advised Jordan to be honest with Cody about her feelings, Jordan responded, "I should be happy, but I'm not. If I tell him, it's going to break his heart." 2 days before Cody's disappearance, Jordan typed a disturbing message. "He held me down the other night, and he was in my face." On July 7th, the police discovered another revealing exchange, in which Jordan intended to talk to Cody, but was terrified of his reaction. Jordan went to her friend Kim's house later that day, and recounted her conversation with Cody, which didn't go well. Cody became enraged, and she left to give him space, eventually spending the night at her step-parents' house. When the police learned about this, they became more suspicious of Jordan. Around the same time, they received information from Google that linked the email address, Carmen Tony 67, to her stepfather's computer. Although a brief interview with each member of the Graham family suggested Jordan was behind the email, it wasn't conclusive evidence. However, cell phone records and security cameras painted a clearer picture. The records showed that Cody and Jordan's phones were in the vicinity of Glacier National Park on the night of Cody's disappearance. Security cameras even captured them entering the park at 9:17 p.m. Despite Jordan's initial denial of being with Cody that night, the evidence suggested otherwise. On July 18, 2013, the police brought Jordan in for questioning and presented her with the evidence. She broke down in tears and finally revealed her version of events from July 8th. According to Jordan, she confessed her marital doubts to Cody, leading to a massive argument. Jordan and her friend decided to take a trip to Glacier National Park and went to the Loop Trail. Jordan explained what happened next in her own words. If her friend hadn't intervened, Cody would have fallen face first down the hill. The detectives asked her, why did she turn around and push him? Jordan believed it was because her emotions were overwhelming at the time. She felt immense pressure, anger, and every other emotion all at once. The detectives were interested in her comment about a blindfold, as they suspected a connection to a stray scarf found near the crime scene. However, Jordan didn't provide any further information, and it was eventually proven to be unrelated. Jordan claimed that Cody's death was an accident, and that she didn't plan the assault in any way. Jordan explained that she hadn't planned to kill her husband, Cody. The situation escalated, and in the heat of the moment, she pushed him off the bridge. When asked about the incident, Jordan admitted that Cody had turned his back to her, facing the cliff, and she pushed him with both hands. She also confessed to creating a fake identity, Carmen Tony, and sending messages from her stepfather's house. Despite her confession, the police didn't charge Jordan that day, and she walked out of the station a free woman. However, they later arrested her at Cody's funeral on July 22nd, after she was seen texting on her phone, displaying a lack of respect that eroded any remaining sympathy for her. Rumors circulated that Jordan had killed Cody to escape their marriage, without the embarrassment of divorce. Her behavior at the funeral, including texting, seemed to confirm these suspicions, implying that she was more concerned about herself than mourning Cody's death. Jordan's motives were called into question, as people wondered if she ever truly loved Cody. She was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and making false statements. After reviewing the evidence, the jury added premeditated first-degree murder to the list of charges. Her trial began on December 9, 2013. From the start, the prosecution aggressively challenged Jordan's story, raising doubts and inconsistencies. They questioned why she lied to Cody's friends and family, and whether she was truly remorseful or innocent. The prosecution's questioning was relentless, and Jordan's situation looked increasingly dire. The testimonies from Cody's loved ones further damaged Jordan's case, portraying her as a heartless wife who murdered her husband to avoid intimacy. Her defense team attempted to argue self-defense, but it seemed unlikely to succeed. Faced with the possibility of a worse outcome, Jordan opted for a plea deal, accepting a 30-year prison sentence without parole in exchange for the prosecution dropping the first-degree murder charge. Before Jordan was sentenced, she tried to withdraw her guilty plea when she learned the prosecution intended to pursue a charge of premeditated first-degree murder, which carried a maximum 50-year sentence. The decision was up to District Judge Donald Malloy, who had to decide whether to accept her original plea or start a new trial. On December 13, 2013, Judge Malloy sentenced Jordan Lynn Graham to 30 years and 5 months in prison. Despite Jordan's attempt to reverse her plea, her case was not reopened or re-examined. The federal prosecution aimed to set a precedent with her case, sending a message that anyone who commits murder under federal jurisdiction will face swift and severe punishment. As a result, Jordan will not be released from prison until she is over 52 years old. The case of Carrie Leah Farver. Carrie Leah Farver was born on November 30, 1974, in Macedonia, Nebraska, USA. As a single mother, she raised her son, Max Maxwell, after experiencing failed relationships in the past. Raising Max was challenging for Carrie. Despite her immense love for her child, she struggled with depression, which led to a period where she spent a month in bed. During this time, her mother, Nancy Rainey, took care of Max. Carrie's difficult relationship with Max's father and unstable living conditions contributed to her mental health issues. At the age of 20, Carrie's struggles led to a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. This condition causes extreme mood swings ranging from euphoria, increased productivity, and excessive friendliness to depression, bitterness, and feelings of powerlessness. Although bipolar disorder significantly complicates daily life, Carrie's doctor found an effective treatment for her in the early 2000s. With this treatment, Carrie was able to manage her condition and live a relatively normal life. Whether Carrie wanted to settle her personal life is an open question. On one hand, what woman doesn't dream of a suitable partner? On the other hand, why commit to someone who might bring worries and misfortunes? Carrie was raised in a loving family and had an active lifestyle. She played sports and aspired to become a doctor. However, her dreams were cut short during her first medical practice when she fainted at the sight of blood. Deciding not to risk her health or her patients, she pursued a career in programming instead. In the fall of 2012, Carrie received a job offer in Omaha with good prospects and decided to take it. However, her son Max was in middle school and preferred to stay in his familiar surroundings, so he remained with his grandmother in Macedonia. According to Amy, a friend of Carrie's father, Carrie had a radiant smile that drew attention whenever she entered a room. It was likely this quality that caught Dave Kropa's eye when they met at an auto repair shop in November 2012. As Carrie showed him something inside her car, a Ford Explorer, Dave felt an instant attraction. Their first date arrived soon after, but their time together was interrupted by numerous calls and messages from a woman named Liz, who eventually stopped by Dave's apartment to collect something she had left there earlier. Dave told Carrie about his past relationship with Liz, whom he met on a dating site 6 months prior. They had been together for a while, but he ended things because she was extremely clingy. Carrie was understanding and wasn't fazed by Liz's presence in Dave's apartment, recognizing that everyone has past relationships that can resurface. 2 weeks after moving in, Carrie started dating Dave. They had discussed their expectations beforehand and agreed to a brief, casual affair. Liz, whose full name is Shauna Elizabeth Gollier, was the first person Dave met online in 2012. Dave and Liz had children around the same age. However, Dave felt Liz wasn't a suitable long-term partner due to her limited education and lack of shared interests. Their relationship focused more on physical intimacy than meaningful conversations. Over time, Liz grew increasingly interested in what Dave was doing when she wasn't around, particularly in regards to who he was seeing. However, Dave consistently reminded her that they were in an open relationship, implying that she shouldn't be concerned about his interactions with others. He also reassured her that she had the freedom to date other men if she chose to do so. Despite Dave's openness, Liz couldn't shake off her feelings of dissatisfaction and jealousy, particularly towards Dave's children and their mother, Amy. She struggled to understand the close bond that persisted between Dave and Amy even after their breakup. As a result, Liz's behavior became increasingly possessive, prompting Dave to create distance between them. It was during this period of separation that Carrie entered Dave's life. Carrie was not only beautiful, but also stylish, intelligent, and a great conversationalist. Dave found himself lost in conversation with her for hours, feeling an undeniable connection as they shared common interests and perspectives. Liz noticed that Dave was becoming increasingly distant, so she tried to rekindle their connection by sending messages, emails, and making phone calls. However, he had no intention of stopping his interactions with Carrie or anyone else for her sake. Meanwhile, Carrie and Dave were spending more nights together, which was convenient for Carrie's work schedule and enjoyable for Dave. Carrie seemed to be taking things lightly, focusing on having fun and not looking for anything serious. In December 2015, Liz was shot and non-fatally wounded, leading her to suspect who might be responsible and realize she needed to take action. 2 years prior, on November 13, 2012, Carrie had kissed Dave goodbye before he left for work, expecting to see him later. However, that would be the last time they saw each other. At 9:45 a.m. that morning, Dave received a surprising text message from Carrie stating she wanted to move in with him permanently. Dave found this message disconcerting as they had previously discussed and agreed not to rush into a relationship, being happy with their current situation. Dave replied that he wasn't ready for such a change, but Carrie's response was unpleasant and filled with profanity. He was shocked to discover that all of Carrie's belongings were gone from the apartment. This led him to believe she had left him for good. That same day, Carrie also removed him as a friend on Facebook, which seemed like the end of the matter. However, Dave started getting multiple rude texts and emails from Carrie daily, containing curses and threats to ruin his life. Carrie sent a large number of these messages, all of which were aggressive. Uncharacteristically, she also stopped showing up for work, despite being known for her punctuality. Strange messages weren't only sent to Dave, but also to her mother and 15-year-old son, Max. She claimed to have found a job in Kansas and planned to take Max with her, but wanted to be alone for the time being due to worries over her failed romance. In May 2013, Carrie posted on Facebook that she'd left of her own free will and was tired of criticism. She wasn't missing her old life but wasn't ready to return home. Carrie asserted her independence as a grown woman, stating that she had the right to leave home if she chose to. She apologized for hurting everyone by leaving abruptly. However, as time passed, Carrie failed to reappear. Her mother became increasingly concerned when Carrie missed important family events, including her own birthday, Max's birthday, and other celebrations. The final indication that something was seriously wrong was when Carrie missed her father's funeral. Liz began receiving messages from Carrie, which were insulting, humiliating, and even threatening. Carrie warned Liz to stay away from Dave. Confused by Carrie's behavior, Liz reached out to Dave, who revealed he was facing a similar situation. Carrie was sending him messages and emails, accusing him of wrongdoing, calling him a liar, and vowing revenge for the pain he allegedly caused her. The messages were sometimes ominous, with Carrie claiming to know what Dave was doing at the moment. The shared experience brought Dave and Liz closer together, but also made Dave feel guiltier about the trouble he had caused. The messages from Carrie grew more menacing and were filled with grammatical errors and illogical content. This was unusual, as Carrie's mother claimed that her daughter had always been a calm person who wrote coherent and well-structured letters and documents. Carrie was known to be meticulous about spelling and writing style. It's possible that she had experienced even more severe mental health issues. Her actions seemed to be driven solely by her uncontrolled mental state. A key indicator of dissociative identity disorder, also known as split personality, is the presence of separate, simultaneous self-consciousness in each ego, each with its own distinct memories, thoughts, behaviors, and inclinations toward specific actions. This might explain Carrie's unusual behavior and altered writing style. Everything suggested she was unstable, which is why the police didn't initially consider her missing, instead focusing on stopping the pursuit of Liz and Dave. They tried to track Carrie's cell phone, but it was unsuccessful due to blocked signals. Meanwhile, Liz and Dave continued to receive hundreds of texts and emails, sometimes simultaneously receiving nasty messages when they were together. Dave and Liz continued dating, but he felt uneasy around her as she became increasingly demanding. Despite claiming to be fine with their no-commitment relationship, Liz's behavior suggested otherwise. Every time Dave tried to end things with Liz, Carrie would start texting him, bonding with him over their shared victimization. This common ground drew Dave and Carrie closer together, causing them to reunite repeatedly. In January 2013, a missing car was surprisingly found in Dave's front yard. However, the fingerprints on the steering wheel didn't match Carrie's, and the car showed no suspicious signs. The police eventually returned the car to Carrie's parents. Carrie continued to message Liz and Dave, escalating her behavior by sending pictures of their children and threatening to harm them unless Dave left Liz alone. As time passed, Carrie's stalking persisted, and Liz's jealousy grew, frustrating Dave. He became exhausted with the events unfolding in his life and eventually found the strength to end his relationship with Liz. This decision came shortly after a tragic incident in August 2013 when Liz reported a fire at her home that resulted in the death of all her pets, including a snake, a cat, and 2 dogs. Liz suspected Carrie was responsible, citing repeated threats made via texts and emails. The incident marked a significant turning point in the case of missing person Carrie Farver, leading to Carrie's placement on a federal wanted list. Tens of thousands of messages were meticulously analyzed. Law enforcement seized cell phones from Dave and Liz, as they believed Dave was also in danger. Someone had vandalized the auto repair shop where he worked and thrown a brick through his window. It appeared that Carrie's anger was directed at anyone in Dave's life. Consequently, Amy Flora, Dave's ex-wife, began receiving threatening messages from Carrie. As Dave spent time with his children, he also saw Amy regularly. The police were perplexed as to why Carrie, who had dated Dave for less than 2 weeks, was now stalking Dave and his ex-wife. The investigators decided to focus on Dave Kropa, as Carrie's disappearance raised many questions that needed to be answered. It was a mystery that didn't add up. Carrie Farver's family was also tirelessly searching for her, exploring every possible lead to find her. Their efforts finally paid off in the spring of 2015 when detectives Ryan Avis and Jim Doty took on the case. Unfortunately, they found no evidence that Carrie was still alive. One of the detectives shared their thoughts with ABC News. It's unusual for adults to suddenly leave without using any money. No one saw or heard from her, which doesn't make sense. She had a good income and a nice home. I've come to believe that I have no proof she's alive. With the help of a digital forensics expert, the detectives analyzed data from Kropa and Golyer's phones from 2013. They discovered that Carrie had sent over 50,000 texts and 15,000 emails to Dave in just 3 years. Whoever was impersonating Carrie became increasingly sophisticated, trying to hide their IP address and true identity. Somebody with expertise in computer programs seemed to be behind the strange occurrences. In December 2015, Liz Golyer contacted the police again, this time reporting that she had been shot in the leg on her own doorstep. She claimed her attacker was Amy Flora, not Carrie. Coincidentally, Dave was missing a gun that Amy may have had access to. This new development raised suspicions that Amy might be involved in Carrie's disappearance. The investigation uncovered a lead that suggested Amy's motive. She may have been seeking revenge against women connected to Dave Kropa. Amy's relationship with Dave had been complicated, and the presence of other women in his life might have prevented them from reuniting. The police promptly questioned Amy, But surprisingly, she had a solid alibi. Multiple witnesses confirmed that she was not at Liz's house when the shooting occurred, so no arrest was made. The investigation became increasingly puzzling. New details emerged from the analysis of Liz's cell phone data. Investigators found fake email addresses using variations of Farver's name and an app used to schedule messages. This discovery shed light on how Liz and Dave received simultaneous messages from Carrie. The investigation led to suspicion of Liz Gollier, which intensified when her fingerprint matched those on Carrie's car steering wheel. It was now clear who the culprit was, and the priority was to prevent further harm. To catch Liz off guard, detectives devised a plan to create a fake narrative, pretending to still consider Amy the prime suspect, aiming to prevent Liz from escaping or destroying evidence. Liz fell for the trap. She was thrilled at the opportunity to eliminate another rival who was threatening her relationship with Dave. Soon after, Liz Gollier gave the police an email supposedly written by Amy. The email included a confession to kidnapping Carrie, along with specific details about the crime. According to the confession, Carrie had been stabbed in the stomach or chest area before her body was disposed of. The email also revealed information about Carrie's car and home that had not been publicly disclosed. According to an investigative spokeswoman, Liz provided detectives with information that only someone intimately involved in the crime could have known. In doing so, she inadvertently implicated herself in Carrie Farver's murder. The letter made it clear that the crime occurred in a car, prompting authorities to re-examine the victim's vehicle. Upon removing the seat covers and fabric, specialists discovered a bloodstain belonging to Carrie Farver. Liz managed to send messages posing as Carrie without arousing suspicion, but it's unclear how. Reports suggest that Liz Gollier led a double life, dating both Dave and a man named Garrett. Notably, Garrett's IP address was linked to messages sent under Carrie's name. When questioned, Garrett revealed that he had been in a long-term relationship with Liz. Out of kindness, Garrett invited Liz to move in with him and his children after a fire. However, their relationship became complicated and deteriorated significantly once they started living together. Garrett would often take care of Liz's children while she isolated herself in her room or left the house. Garrett was shocked by what the police told him. It was discovered that Liz spent 40 to 50 hours a week pretending to be a missing woman. Although her room was messy, no significant evidence was found. However, investigators did discover several cell phones and electronic devices in the last place she stayed. In late December 2016, Shauna Liz was charged with first-degree murder. The county prosecutor commented on the complexity of the investigation, stating that most murders are dark, but this crime was particularly bizarre. It would take some convincing to make someone believe it actually happened. Liz's actions, including letting her dog die in a fire she set herself and shooting herself in the thigh, were attempts to deflect suspicion from herself. Liz's attorney, James Martin Davis, believed the case against her was weak, since it was largely based on circumstantial evidence. Key pieces of evidence were missing, including Carrie's body and the crime weapon, and Liz had not confessed to the crime. In fact, there was no conclusive proof that Carrie was even dead. The defense team requested a mistrial, which would allow a judge to determine the extent of Shauna's guilt. The prosecution presented a substantial amount of complex electronic evidence, as well as physical evidence. They argued that the amount of blood found on the passenger seat of Carrie's car supported the theory that she had been stabbed. Investigators also found a direct link between Shauna and Carrie's murder by analyzing a memory card that Shauna had used around the time Carrie went missing. The memory card, which was found in a tablet stored at Dave's residence, contained deleted images. It was clear that the foot belonged to a person who had been deceased for several years. Notably, Carrie had a similar tattoo among her distinguishing features. Her mother later confirmed that the tattoo indeed belonged to Carrie. The photo solidified the conviction of Shauna Liz as a predator. The judge ruled her guilty of first-degree murder and handed down a life sentence without parole, stating that Carrie Farver did not disappear by choice but was tragically murdered. Authorities suspect that Shauna murdered Carrie, allowed her body to decompose, and then burned the remains to eliminate all evidence. Motivated by jealousy, she decided to eliminate her rival. After disposing of Carrie, Shauna took her cell phone and used it to send messages that would make Farver appear unstable and win back Dave's favor. When this plan succeeded, Shauna wanted to eliminate Amy as well, but she became too entangled in her own scheme and ultimately fell into her own trap. Shauna, also known as Liz, was also found guilty of arson for setting fire to her own home in August 2013 and attempting to blame it on Carrie. The fire destroyed the house and killed pets, resulting in an additional 20-year prison sentence. She is currently serving her sentence at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women, despite maintaining her innocence. Dave revealed that he received thousands of emails and text messages signed by Carrie over the years. However, he claimed that he never noticed Carrie stalking him during their relationship, which contrasts with his experience with Shauna. So what happened to Carrie's son, Maxwell Farver? According to his LinkedIn profile, he followed in his mother's footsteps and became a computer programmer. He graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in software engineering data science and is now married. Although it's unlikely he's forgotten the past, he may have found some peace with his new family. As for Dave Kropa, he now lives a private life away from the public eye. He doesn't have a public account on any social media platform. This disturbing crime story is a harsh reminder of the complexities and manipulation that can occur in human relationships. It highlights how vulnerable we can be in our own surroundings, unaware of the true nature of those around us. The case of Lisa Cecilia Hardam, the fiancée of a tyrant who turned a luxury apartment into a prison. Controlling behavior in couple relationships, unfortunately, is not uncommon and quite dangerous. It manifests itself when a person tries to subjugate and forcibly adapt their other half to their own needs through intimidation, demonstrations of strength and power, as well as humiliation and total control. Often the victim, because of the instilled feelings of fear and guilt, does not realize that he or she is in a destructive situation. The story of a young woman named Lisa Cecilia Hardam illustrates what a relationship with a control freak can lead to. She naively believed that she had met the love of her life, but she herself did not notice how her fiancé became a monster who turned their luxurious apartment into a real prison with 24-hour video surveillance. This case provoked an international scandal and was widely covered in the press. The unfortunate Lisa tried to make Lisa look mentally unstable and cold-blooded crime to pass off as an accident or voluntary resignation from life. However, the perpetrator, despite his money and connections, did not manage to escape responsibility. Now let's understand how her beloved man turned into a monster who hid his inhuman attitude behind care. Lisa Cecilia Hardam, biography, family, early years. Our today's heroine was born in Canada on June 12, 1981 in the suburbs of Toronto and was the second child in the family. Lisa was brought up together with her older brother Jason, with whom she has always been very close. They were raised independently by single mom Joanna. Brother and sister did not remember their father because he left the family when the children were very young and no longer took any part in their lives. Lisa Cecilia grew up as an active and purposeful girl. From an early age, she was involved in sports. Together with her brother, went to the martial arts section, liked to play soccer and volleyball. But her main passion has always been ballet. She daily visited the dance studio where she practiced at the bar for several hours. The girl from childhood was tall and slender, but professional ballet classes required the strictest diet, which had a detrimental effect on the growing body. In adolescence, Lisa developed anorexia on the background of eating disorders. For a long time, she kept silent about her problem, believing that she could cope with everything herself. But when her weight approached critically low values, her mother sounded the alarm and put her daughter in the clinic, where Lisa needed to spend several months to restore health and weight gain. After graduating from school, the girl continued dancing classes and also decided to connect her life with the beauty industry. In parallel with her university studies, she got a job as a perfumer in one of the stores of a large cosmetics chain. And in her spare time, she studied the subtleties of makeup and hairdressing, moving to Australia. In 2005, having celebrated her 24th birthday, Lisa decided to make drastic changes in her life. She wanted to go to the other side of the world, to Australia, and there were several reasons for that. Firstly, she wanted to live in a warmer and milder climate. And secondly, Lisa wanted to see the world. She took a one-year work visa and traveled to another continent. However, with her then flew Joanna, who accompanied her daughter for the first few months to make sure that she was all right and she settled well in the new place. The mother then returned back to Toronto with peace of mind, making sure her daughter could take care of herself. Lisa settled in Sydney, where she rented a cozy apartment and soon got a job at a local small cosmetology company. After her visa expired, she decided to move to Australia permanently. First, she extended her stay for another year and then began to prepare the necessary documents to obtain citizenship of this country. Personal life. As for personal life in this respect, everything was not easy. The fact is that Lisa always preferred to meet with older men. Obviously, not the least role in this played a lack of a father in the family, so she always reached out to more mature men, looking for support and protection in them. In 2006, Lisa successfully interviewed for a job at Sydney Cosmetics and was hired. She soon began in a romantic relationship with a coworker who was almost twice her age. A few months later, they decided to start living together, and Lisa moved into the apartment of her lover. And after a couple more months, the girl introduced her boyfriend to her mom and brother, and they approved her choice. The couple traveled a lot around the world, rested in the Seychelles and Paris, and also visited the famous carnival in Rio de Janeiro. The man even made Lisa a marriage proposal, which she gladly accepted. But about a year after the engagement, the lovers broke up. Lisa did not go into detail about the reasons for this decision, but hinted that too great a difference in age, however, played in this not the least role. In 2010, Lisa graduated from the Sydney College of Stylists and got a job as a hairdresser in a popular beauty salon, where she quickly won the respect of colleagues and the trust of customers. At the same time, a new boyfriend appeared in her life, but their romance did not last long because Lisa found out that he was married. Destroy someone else's family she was not going to, so she quickly broke off the relationship. But shortly before that, at one of the parties, this guy introduced her friend, a businessman named Simon Gitney. This acquaintance turned out to be fatal for Lisa. Who is Simon Gitney? Simon was born in Maryland in December 1973 in a very religious large family of immigrants from Lebanon. He had 5 other siblings whom his parents raised in strictness and obedience. However, Simon from a young age had problems with controlling emotions and outbursts of anger. And he was also possessive, did not tolerate rejection, and often gave the will of his fists. All this eventually led to serious problems with the law. The first time Gitney was behind bars was at the age of 18, when he came to his ex-girlfriend in the store where she worked and began to openly molest her. The store owner interceded for the girl and threw the impudent man out the door, but Simon returned with friends who grabbed the store owner and held him while Simon beat him severely. At that time, the guy only served a few months and was released on bail for good behavior afterwards. But 3 years later, he was arrested again, this time on theft charges. However, Simon resisted violently, threw himself into a fight and bit off one of the policeman's earlobe. He was threatened with a serious prison sentence for this prank, but the pastor of the Lebanese Christian church, of which his entire family was members, interceded. As a result, the young man spent only a year and a half in prison. In 2000, Simon again came to the attention of the police, and this time he was arrested for possession and distribution of illegal substances. But the sentence was again extremely lenient, and he served 2 years out of the 4 assigned to him. On release, Gadami, as it seemed to everyone, took the path of correction. He moved to Sydney, where with a few friends founded a fairly successful business for the production and sale of luxury women's shoes. This business brought a stable high income, so Simon quickly became rich, acquired luxury real estate in a prestigious neighborhood, a premium class car, and carefully tried to hide from everyone his rich criminal past, from his roommates to his lovers. At that party, Simon and Lisa exchanged phone numbers, and soon he called her himself. Their relaxed communication somehow imperceptibly grew into a buddy relationship. And when in January 2010, Lisa complained that she was unhappy with her current living conditions and would like to rent an apartment in another neighborhood, Itani kindly offered her to live for free in one of the rooms of his luxurious apartment while she was looking for a suitable place to rent. Lisa accepted the offer, although her mother was somewhat alarmed by this turn of events. But Lisa convinced Joanna that it was a temporary measure and that she and Simon are just friends. By the way, she herself at that time thought that the man who so carefully monitors his appearance and adores piercings preferred to build relationships with guys. But this opinion turned out to be wrong. For the first couple of months, Gedani really kept his distance. The young people lived in separate rooms and there was not even a hint of intimacy or romance between them. But gradually they got closer, the so-called spark, and started a romance which quickly gained momentum. At the time of the beginning of their relationship, Simon was 37 years old and Lisa, 28. Simon seemed to her a beautiful prince from a fairy tale. He was sociable, cheerful, spoiled his beloved with gifts, and arranged her pleasant surprises. The couple began to appear everywhere together. In particular, they went together to an elite sports club, which Simon attended regularly for many years. Lisa was sure that finally met her true love and will live a long, happy life with the chosen one. She raved about him to her mother, brother, and friends, and had no idea that this fairy tale would soon end. An affectionate tyrant, Just 6 months after the beginning of the relationship, Simon's behavior began to change. But it happened in stages and in such a way that Lisa did not notice anything. Thinking that the lover does everything for her own good, he gradually distanced Lisa from friends and family, erased all her personal boundaries, tried to change her views, tastes, and behavior, adjusting them to his needs. In June 2010, shortly after Lisa celebrated her 29th birthday, Simon began to persistently persuade her to quit her job, claiming that she was not valued there and she could find a better paid position. But Lisa loved working at the beauty salon, where she had many regular clients and was happy with her income, so she didn't understand why she should quit her job and refused to do so. Simon was not satisfied with the refusal, and in August of the same year, he showed up at Lisa's salon, having thrown a loud scandal, which actually forced her to write a letter of resignation. Lisa Hardim was shocked by his behavior, but Kitani assured that it would be better, and in general, she can no longer work, because his income will allow them both to live comfortably. Nothing to deny themselves. A month and a half later, the couple moved into a new luxury apartment located on the 15th floor of an elite residential complex. As it later turned out, the room was literally stuffed with hidden surveillance cameras, of which Lisa, of course, did not even guess. Simon gave his beloved an expensive smartphone and laptop, pre-installed on them spyware that allowed him to track all her messages, emails, as well as listen to calls and see all of Lisa's movements. In addition, Simon gained access to her social media accounts and began to discreetly clean lists of friends, delete posts and photos at his discretion, as well as read personal correspondence. Total control. Kitani's control over Lisa increased day by day, but as an experienced manipulator, he made it look as if his girlfriend wanted to do as he told her. Kitani had invaded literally every aspect of her life, leaving no hint of privacy. He forbade Lisa to use cosmetics, claiming that she does too bright makeup, which makes her look vulgar. He also bought her clothes and unsightly clothes in gray and black colors, and all her outfits simply threw away, arguing that they were too revealing, and men would stare at her. From the apartment, Lisa went out only accompanied by her lover. They visited together only those places that he himself chose. Simon even forbade her to visit the gym. Instead, he bought several expensive exercise machines, saying that now she could train at home. Lisa's social media friend lists were dwindling by the day, and eventually, Kitani convinced her to delete the accounts. Lisa also had no friends left in real life, and all her contacts and calls were closely monitored. Simon only allowed her to communicate with her mother and brother. Last trip home. In December 2010, Lisa decided to fly to Canada to celebrate Christmas with her family. Simon was going to fly with her, but at the last moment, his plans were disrupted because of urgent business matters. He didn't plan to let his friend go alone, but she literally begged him because she hadn't seen her mom and brother for over a year. In the end, he agreed but set strict conditions and rules which she had to strictly follow. Jason and Joanna were shocked at the changes that had happened to Lisa over the past year. She was nothing like the bright and cheerful beauty she had been before. She had literally become her own shadow. There was not a drop of makeup on her face. Her luxurious hair was pulled into a ponytail and hidden under a headdress. Her clothes were baggy, unattractive, and completely black. But it wasn't even the outward changes that were the most frightening. Lisa flinched every time the phone rang and instantly grabbed the receiver. It was one of Simon's conditions. She had to answer immediately at any time of day, no matter what she was doing at that moment. Lisa stayed at her mother's house all the time, refused to see her friends, and hardly ever went out. Joanna was alarmed and frightened by this behavior of her daughter, and she decided to have a heart-to-heart talk with her. Then Lisa burst into tears and admitted that Simon always knows where she is, with whom she communicates, and what she talks about on the phone. Lisa also revealed that Simon doesn't allow her to work, see her friends, go to the gym, or have any hobbies. In fact, she had no friends left at all. Her mother was shocked. She began to persuade her daughter to stay in Canada because in Australia she has nothing to keep her. But Lisa said that she loved Simon and did not want to break off the relationship with him. Lisa was sure that this is just a transitional period in their relationship because they have been together for less than a year, and soon he will calm down and loosen his grip. She also added that her lover cares about her and wishes her only good. Despite pleas from her family to stay and attempts to convince Lisa that the relationship was unhealthy, she decided to move back to Australia to stay with Gitney. Lisa reassured her mother, saying that there was nothing to worry about and that Simon loved her and would not hurt her. Prisoner. After Lisa returned, the situation only got worse. Simon forbade her to leave the apartment, and if they went out together, she had to look only at her feet so as not to meet the eyes of other men. Moreover, Simon began to call Lisa by her second name, Cecilia, because it seemed more decent to him. In the spring of 2011, Lisa began to complain of pain in her leg. It was an old injury received in his youth during ballet classes. But instead of taking her to the hospital, Yatani hired a female physical therapist who came to their home 3 times a week to give her massages. She soon became Lisa's only friend and confidant, to whom Lisa spoke candidly about the difficult situation she found herself in. On June 12th, for Lisa's 30th birthday, Simon decided to throw a party at the most expensive restaurant in Sydney. But among the guests were only Simon's relatives and people from his inner circle. Lisa, on her own birthday, boyfriend did not allow to invite anyone. At the end of the evening, Simon proposed to Lisa by putting a ring on her finger. Hardim responded with consent and then cried. But all present noticed that these were not tears of joy, but rather tears of despair and hopelessness. Back home, Lisa called her mother and informed her of her engagement, sobbing into the phone. But Joanna was not at all happy about it. She began to persuade her daughter to leave this man and, as soon as possible, to return home to Canada. In response, Lisa only asked her mother never to start such conversations on the phone. At that moment, she already realized that the fiancé was listening to the calls. Although she did not know for sure. Escape planned for a while, Lisa tried to distract herself with thoughts of the upcoming wedding and began planning the festivities. When she decided to consult with Simon about something related to the event, he rudely cut her off and told her that he would choose the place, buy her address, and make the guest list. Lisa was utterly crushed, for she had no say even here. During another visit to the physiotherapist, Lisa admitted that she couldn't go on like this, but she couldn't leave because her fiancé wouldn't let her go. Together, they developed a plan according to which Lisa, at each visit of the masseuse, gave her some of her belongings for safekeeping, but did everything so that Simon did not notice anything. On July 28th, Simon left his laptop at home in a hurry, which he usually carried with him everywhere. Lisa took advantage of this and looked into it, and her worst fears were realized. There she found a spyware program with the help of which the fiancé received all the data from her phone, as well as numerous recordings of her conversations with her mother. But the most horrifying discovery was the surveillance footage from the security cameras located in every room of their apartment. That same day, Lisa, using her physical therapist's phone, called her mother and asked her to come on the next flight to her apartment and take her home. However, Joanna could not leave work so quickly. She needed time to ask for an excuse to switch shifts with one of her colleagues. Afterwards, the woman could never forgive herself for this delay. Back home, Simon immediately realized that his fiancée had taken his laptop and seen the spyware. Lisa cried, trying to figure out why she deserved to be treated that way. But Simon only pointed out that he'd done it for her own good. Accident or murder. The next day, July 29th, a serious conversation took place between the young people, the recording of which was later presented in court. Lisa was in tears and asked to go home, but Katani calmly and confidently said that this would never happen, asked Lisa to calm down and claim that she had mental problems. On the morning of July 30th, 2011, Lisa got up early, got fully dressed and put her documents and essentials in her purse. She locked herself in the bathroom and called her mother one last time, telling her that if anything happened to her, it would be Simon's fault. Apparently, Lisa wanted to leave the apartment unnoticed while her fiancé slept, but she failed. What happened next can only be guessed. According to neighbors, they heard a scream in the hallway, but did not have time to react because all abruptly hushed. And exactly a minute later, a young woman fell from the balcony of the 15th floor, crashing to her death. Several passers-by on the street also heard the scream and saw a body falling from a height, but did not have time to realize what was happening. According to a guy who was walking his dog that morning and was closest to the scene, he heard a noise and looked up. The eyewitness saw a man holding something large, which he then threw down. When passers-by came to the place of the fall, they saw a young woman lying on the ground. But all attempts to help her were in vain, as she died instantly, having received extensive injuries. 3 minutes later, Katani, dressed in his pajamas, ran out into the street. He was crying, saying he didn't know how he was going to live his life and claiming that he hadn't caught his fiancée in time. At first glance, it looked like an accident, but Simon himself was quick to claim that his fiancée had voluntarily passed away. A note in his pocket and a frightening video. Strange things began as soon as the body was taken to the morgue and examined. In different pockets were found fragments of a note torn into small pieces with the text. There are cameras everywhere in the apartment. Probably Lisa was afraid that Simon might find the message, so she turned the note into a kind of garbage and scattered it in different pockets. A check showed that there were indeed a lot of cameras in the apartment, but the hard disk with recordings could not be found, and Simon claimed that there was no video recording at all. A surveillance camera in the communal hallway, on the other hand, captured something frightening. The short clip shows Lisa running out of the apartment and calling for help, but her fiancé grabs her from behind, covers her mouth, and drags her back in. This happened a minute before she fell off the balcony, and it was the scream that the neighbors heard. And Gattani's laptop was found to contain a recording of a conversation he and Lisa had the night before the tragedy, as well as spyware that Simon used to spy on his fiancée. According to Simon, he and Lisa had an argument that morning, and she became hysterical. She ran out into the hallway screaming, but he brought her back because he didn't want to put on a show for the neighbors. In the apartment, he picked up the phone to call her mother, but Lisa ran out to the balcony at that moment and threw herself down, and he ran after her but did not catch her in time. He claimed that she had threatened to take her own life before, but he didn't take her words seriously. But Gattani attributed the spy program to his concern for his fiancée's safety. Trial and sentencing. In the course of the trial, Simon was accompanied by already a new pasta, 22-year-old model Rachel Louise, who was just incredibly similar to his dead fiancé. However, later it was said that the girl just wanted to become famous at the expense of this high-profile case, and therefore willingly talked to the press and appeared on television, saying that Gattani would never raise his hand on a woman. Simon's lawyers tried to convince the court that Lisa suffered from a mental disorder, was prone to hysterics, and could have voluntarily passed away. Even a long history of anorexia and treatment in a clinic came up. The defense also argued that the defendant, being short in stature, simply could not physically lift Lisa, who was taller than him, and also could not throw her off the balcony. But this version was refuted by a trainer from the gym, which Simon had attended regularly for many years. According to the trainer, the defendant worked with heavy weights, was much stronger than he appeared outwardly, and could easily have lifted Lisa. This was also supported by the absence of Lisa's fingerprints on the railing and the glass barrier, as she could not have jumped without leaning on them. Also testifying in court was the physiotherapist to whom Lisa had told in detail everything that had happened to her, and had given her her belongings in the hope of escaping from the tyrant. It was her testimony that was decisive. Gattani was found guilty of murdering his fiancée and sentenced to 26 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 18 years. After the verdict was announced, Rachel Louise threw a tantrum and began to insult the judge, for which she was removed from the room. All attempts by Simon and his lawyers to challenge the court's decision were rejected, and the verdict remained in force. Rachel soon dumped her boyfriend, saying in an interview that it was difficult for them to maintain a relationship in prison, but she remains convinced of his innocence.